Tonight we're learning a lot about the state of politics here in New York. Siena Research Institute is out with its latest poll, giving us a sense of where voters stand on some of the big issues being debated right now as the governor and lawmakers are finishing the state budget. One of the most talked about proposals is the governor's plan to ban kids from having cell phones with them throughout the school day. Now, this poll shows 61% of voters back that plan. It's pretty much the same, by the way, among Democrats, Republicans, and independents. There's also broad support for the governor's proposal to make it a crime to wear a mask in public to try to conceal your identity while threatening or harassing someone. 64% of those polled are in favor of that. Only a quarter of people are against it. Meanwhile, voters aren't quite as sure about what the governor wants to do with the state's discovery laws, which dictate what prosecutors have to hand over before a criminal trial. 43% are in support of what the governor wants to do to make some changes. 24% are opposed. A lot of people say they're in the middle right there as well. Now, if you add all of this up, it seems to be helping Governor Hochul. More New Yorkers have a favorable opinion of her than unfavorable for the first time in more than a year. You can see she's at 44% favorable, 43% unfavorable. President Trump is underwater. 40% have a favorable view of him, 55% unfavorable. And look there at U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer. He's faced a lot of criticism, including from his fellow Democrats. His favorability rating now is at its lowest point ever in this poll at just 39%. Bob McCarthy is our 7 News political analyst, and he joins me live here tonight. It's great to see you as always, Bob. And I want to start there with the issues that we talked about, because a source very close to all of this told me today that the state budget is almost done.
Right.
Do you think this poll makes any difference in pushing some of those items over the finish line?
Sure it does. And I think what it shows is that the governor knows that these proposals that she has are very popular. She does her own polling. Mm-hmm. She knows that, and so therefore she has a lot of public leverage, I think, with the legislators on this. But I think as we get down to crunch time, you'll see some compromise, because she has to deal with the legislature. She has to maintain some give and take with the Senate and the Assembly. So you'll probably see some kind of compromise on this, but that's the way it works in Albany. But nevertheless, she's in a strong position, as this poll shows, on the issues that are very important to her.
And when you add that up, as I said, this is her best favorability rating since, I think, January of last year. We've talked a lot here about how she's been struggling in the polls. What do you make of the fact that more people view her favorably now versus unfavorably?
Well, it's an improvement, and I'm sure on the second floor of the Capitol tonight they're very happy about those numbers, but they're still really not good numbers, Michael, and she's got a long ways to go. And as we've talked about before, all of her issues resonate with voters. She doesn't, for some reason. She has trouble communicating all of this with the voters, and so that remains a problem. But she's making progress anyway. So.
Meanwhile, it's the opposite direction for U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer. I mean, these numbers are just very eye-opening. The worst he's ever done in this poll. What do you make of that? Well,
if you look into the crosstabs, she is mostly having trouble with the real liberal voters, which kind of makes sense. And it explains why someone like Congresswoman AOC is kind of surging up in the numbers here a little bit. But, you know, we will see him really fighting against Trump proposals everywhere he goes. He did that last week when he was in town in Lancaster. He was railing against some of the dangers he saw of Medicare threats from the Trump administration. You're going to really see him ramp that up, I think. And so, but you know, he's got a problem. Of course, his problem is 4 years away too. So as far as election goes, so.
Yeah, just real quickly, I mean, does this make any difference with Chuck Schumer? Probably not, right? And
Chuck Schumer is going to be Chuck Schumer. Yeah, he's going to do his thing. But you know what? It's something you have to keep your eye on in this situation.
And we'll do that. And then finally, you mentioned there that he is going to rail against President Trump. No surprise, in what is a blue state, New Yorkers are not fond of what Donald Trump is doing here in terms of trying to cut waste, fraud, and abuse in government, in terms of, you know, pretty much policies across the board. But his favorability rating was 1 point better than Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, isn't that something?
How is President Trump doing?
I know. Well, you know, he, as we saw in the last election, he made some inroads in New York State. But the things that he is proposing, all of those issues, from tariffs to immigration, not cutting it with New York voters. So I think that things have changed a lot from the November election, especially as we see the realities of the Trump proposals and what's going on with the economy and everything else. So those things are just not popular in New York State the way they are in places like Texas or Florida. So.
Absolutely. All right, our 7 News political analyst Bob McCarthy live with us tonight. Bob, thanks so much.
Okay, Michael.